Hello, and welcome to this lecture entitled The Ethics of Public History. All occupations that have claimed professional status any time in the 20th century developed a code of ethics. Some of these codes included the ethos, that is, the methods of doing the work. These codes became long and unwieldy. Most were guidelines, however, for acting morally and responsibly, and exercising integrity and character, even if we leave those terms ill-defined. The National Council on Public History is the premier professional organization for public history practitioners in the U.S. It has taken the responsibility for creating a professional code of ethics updated in 2007. This code is indeed one of ethics rather than ethos. It contains guidelines for responsible and moral practice. We have some questions about the code. Does it apply to public history practitioners who are not NCPH members? It applies indirectly, mostly by consumer understanding, and then often only in the breach. That is, there is no legal licensing of public historians like there is of doctors and lawyers, so the NCPH has no real way to enforce the code, especially on non-members. Nevertheless, the public can use its moral suasion, that is, its informal means of pressure through opprobrium, to scold a public historian for acting contrary to the code. More than likely, such scolding won't really get at what the code says, but will respond to the public's own basic understanding of integrity and how a practitioner should act. If a public historian acts contrary to the code, how is the code enforced? The NCPH does not have an enforcement arm, but code violators risk their reputation with new employers or clients and may find it hard to find work or collaborators. Enforcement of the code relies on the good faith practice of public history practitioners and the fact that it is not particularly arcane or onerous. That is to say, the code is intuitive and it's about how you treat people honestly when they encounter you acting as a public historian. Let's look at the code itself. It's divided into 4 areas of responsibility, with 5 to 9 guidelines each. One of these is responsibility to the public. Another is responsibility to the client and employer. A third is responsibility to colleagues and the profession. And the last is responsibility to self. Some of these are obvious standard practices for all professional historians and people who work with public information. Others are specific to public history practice. Under responsibility to the public, for example, we are enjoined to advocate for long-term care for and accessibility to historical resources and to present our research with integrity. But we are also told to know for what purposes our work will be used and what long-term decisions might come from our work. This is especially true in cases in which public historians work for governmental entities or other groups with power over citizens or employees. Don't help someone with power commit a wrongful act or tell a falsehood based on your work. Under our responsibility to our clients and employers, we should work diligently and competently, as is always the case. Yet while respecting our clients' or employers' objectives for our work, we must not surrender our independence or allow pressure, however hard or soft, to impose their agenda. Again, this has to do with preventing your work from becoming party to bad acts from those who hire you. Furthermore, in the battle for clients, you cannot mislead, pressure, or imply an ability to influence outside decisions, such as telling clients that by hiring you they stand a better chance of doing business with one of your relatives or with an entity with which you're associated. By the same token, you cannot use your position to gain advantage. That is, no influence peddling or pressure. Professionals give themselves a higher responsibility than mere profit seeking. Furthermore, you should not accept a job that you are not capable of accomplishing. You should not tell clients secrets, nor should you get into a situation where there is a hint of a conflict of interest. Now, in many cases, both the law and best practices guard against actual conflicts of interest by requiring full disclosure of a business arrangement. You have a responsibility toward your colleagues and the profession itself as well. When you begin your research for a project, you must read the pertinent literature thoroughly and present it accurately. That's true of all historical projects and is a hallmark of rigorous academic practice. It's sometimes tempting to spin rather than interpret the literature to fit your preconceived notions or bolster a weak argument, but avoid that in all circumstances. Furthermore, conduct your research in accordance with all best practices, and because public history incorporates ideas and methods from other disciplines, know the codes of ethics and best practices from those disciplines when you employ them. Yes, it's true that this requires you to study and learn disciplines outside of what you think of as your own, and it takes time to acquire proper habits of thought and sufficient expertise. But that's the field. Furthermore, you have a responsibility to contribute to public knowledge by communicating your research findings, to be fair to the ideas of your colleagues, to help the profession develop by mentoring and guiding new practitioners, and to gather a diverse group of practitioners into the professional fold in order to help the profession tell the most complete history possible. Now, finally, a public historian has a responsibility to self. Be honest about your ability, respect others, avoid doing wrongful acts, and separate your personal biases and beliefs from the practice of public history. Also, you have the responsibility to participate in the profession, particularly by seeking continuing education to improve your skills and knowledge. Now let's do a little exercise. Take about 3 minutes, broken into 3 one-minute segments. The first, about 60 seconds, and it's longer than you think. Remember or imagine an incident in which public historians potentially violated the NCPH Code of Ethics. Take another 60 seconds to discover which responsibility and guideline that practitioner violated. Finally, take a third 60 seconds to articulate how that public historian could have avoided violating the guidelines. Be as specific as possible. Most of us want to act with integrity, and we understand intrinsically how to do so in most situations. What makes public history different is only in the specific operations and practices that the work requires us to do, and so we articulate more specifically the guidelines. With this, I'll end the lecture, and thank you for your time and attention.